Hello, you join me here at Bidston railway station on the Wirral line on the Merseyrail network, as well as the junction for the Borderlands line, the Transport for Wales line from here at Bidston to Wrexham Central. Now, a few weeks ago I made a video on the Class 769 Flex bi-mode train. Now in that video I suggested the Class 769s were Britain's worst and most unreliable trains, and a lot of you agreed. But also some of you suggested that I should have a look at the Class 230s, known as the D train. These trains are the converted former District Line underground trains which Viva Rail converted into sort of battery electric, battery diesel trains to operate short branch lines. So these trains currently operate with Transport for Wales on the Borderlands Line and have been very unreliable. They used to operate with London North Western Railway, and in the future they may operate with Great Western Railway. So in today's video we're going to have a little ride on the Borderlands Line, on the 230s and maybe some 197s as well. We're going to have a little look at the history of the Class 230s. Why are they so unreliable? Are they still unreliable? And well, are they also just generally good trains? What are they like to go on? All that in today's video.
Except maybe not. At the time of recording, there had been a broken down freight train at Wrexham, which basically meant the whole of the Borderlands Line from Bidston to Wrexham was completely not in operation. All the trains had been cancelled for several hours. Don't worry, there will be trains featured in this video a little later, but it meant that I had a few hours to kill at Bidston, so I went to get some food, and then I came back to Bidston to talk about the history of the Class 230s. After that, I do finally get on a train out of Bidston, but yeah, let's join me at Bidston Station where I'm talking about the history of the 230s.
Hello, now you join me at Bidston Station. I've just had lunch from Tesco. I've just missed another rail replacement bus because I was too long at Tesco, but it's fine because there's a train running. The next departure from Bidston is a train. It's a Class 197, so not a Class 230, but it is a train. So we're going to get that in about 45 minutes time. But before that, let's just go through the history of the Class 230 up until entry into service for Transport for Wales. Now, the Class 230 concept was conceived in 2015 when the D stock on the District Line was being retired and replaced by either the S7 or the S8 stock, the new subsurface line stock. The D stock dates back from 1980 when they were first brought into service, and I think they were finally retired in 2017 or 2018. But yeah, they were old tube trains, and a company from Saltham in Warwickshire, which is actually quite close to where I'm originally from, decided, you know what, we're going to take on these trains because they're going to be sent for scrap otherwise, and we're going to try and convert them into a mainline train, either a battery or a diesel electric or a fully electric or something. We're basically going to convert it into a train which can run on branch lines or shorter distance lines, such as the Borderlands Line. Hello, it's me from the future at a mysterious station, which you'll find out later in the video where I am. But I just wanted to butt in and talk about why this project was being sold in the first place. These trains were advertised as being much cheaper. Their lease rental costs were about half as much as a conventional Class 150 or other diesel multiple unit or other multiple unit of the similar size, and they were also much more fuel efficient. And in terms of maintenance, it's just 40p per car per mile compared to 60p per carriage per mile on conventional trains. So Viva Rail sold this really as a sort of replacement for older trains, but keeping it cost efficient whilst also being a pretty modern and good offering. Anyway, sorry to butt in. Back to me at Bidston. Now, this company, Viva Rail, was founded in 2012 and was actually led by Adrian Shooter, who was the former CEO of Chiltern Railways and was sort of the main man behind the revitalisation of Chiltern Railways and brought Chiltern Railways to become one of the most successful privatised rail companies. So Viva Rail got to work converting these Class 230s into a mainline specified train. They refitted everything. They made it so it had all the modifications it needed to be mainline certificate worthy, and in 2016 it was tested on the nearby Leamington to Nuneaton line, which is nearby to where Saltham is, and it sort of ran shuttles between back and forth there to sort of proof of concept, it works. Did catch fire in December 2016 at Kenilworth Station, and we'll get onto why that actually didn't really help the 230s. But yeah, the train worked except for when it caught fire a few times. Now, the 230 design reused and renewed the bogies as well as the traction equipment, replacing the former 4-rail DC system with a modular diesel and battery pack system and AC traction motors as well. The bi-mode electric multiple unit version was fitted with 106 kilowatt battery rafts, providing a range of up to 40 miles, requiring an 8-minute charge on each journey, with 230.002 being the first unit to be this battery electric multiple unit, with 230.001 being the diesel electric multiple unit. At first, Viva actually tried to sell these units to companies such as Northern, because the franchise at the time was being renewed, so Circo Abellio was either going to win an extension or lose the franchise. So Viva came forward to all the bidders and said, we can provide these trains to help replace the Pacers, because obviously one of the biggest challenges and changes for the new Northern franchise in 2017-2018 was the replacement of the ageing and not accessible worthy Pacer trains. However, Arriva decided instead they were going to completely replace the stock, the Pacers, with brand new trains, the 195s and 331s, which we have to this day. Viva did then turn closer to home with London Midland, who ran on the Coventry to Nuneaton line, and Viva said, look, we've been testing our unit on that line, it's run quite well apart from the fire, would you be interested? And I think it was in June and July 2016, one of those 2 months, London Midland said yes, we'll trial it for a year, running services, it can help relief Coventry Arena during Coventry City Football Club match days, and we'll run it as a trial and then we'll work out what to do after that. And then it caught fire in 2016 and then it lost its, London Midland decided not to test out the units because of safety fears, and probably fair enough. But Viva didn't give up. They actually turned to Go Up, who was a prospective and proposed open access operator, who was going to run a service from Taunton to Nuneaton, which is a really weird service. Never happened, but they said that they would use Class 230s, which is like a very long service to be using 230s on. But this never happened, and it took until 2018 for the Class 230s to finally gain an operator, and it was London Midland's successor, West Midlands Trains, who said that they would use the units, they would take on two-car Class 230s for use on the Marston Vale line, and it would replace older Class 150s. And one of the main benefits to the 230s, the reason that the 230s was chosen, is because the 150s are very short, and the platforms of the Marston Vale line are extremely short. So even a two-car Class 172, which London Midland had, would be too long, so platforms would either have to be extended and that cost money, or they could get the 230s, which are small enough to run perfectly fine on the Marston Vale line. Then, just like London buses, when one comes, they all come, Transport for Wales came in and said that they would order 5 3-carriage Class 230s to operate here on the Borderlands Line from Bidston to Wrexham, and they would also replace Class 150s. Now, in terms of the operations of these units, it took a year for London North Western units to enter service, which was a little bit delayed, but not that much of a delay. Only a year between ordering and entry into service isn't bad. They were quite well received. I remember watching a video on Jeff Marshall about the units, and I was like, wow, these are quite cool. Now, similar to London North Western, Transport for Wales said that they wanted their units in service by March 2019, with all 5 entered into service by May. This never happened. To cut a long story short, the units were just delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed, firstly by technical issues and driver training, and then along came COVID, which just absolutely obliterated driver training and any hopes of the units being brought into service, within 2019, 2020, 2021. In October 2021, Transport for Wales said that the units would enter service by 2022, although they didn't have a set date on when this was, and they did blame COVID. However, that 2022 deadline never made it, and it was made even worse by the fact that in November 2022, Viva Rail, who made the units, collapsed, and this was detrimental to the Class 230 project. Now, it is worth noting that they did successfully bring into service the Class 484s, which were a replacement to the 483s on the Isle of Wight, but that's a different story. Back to the 230s, Viva Rail's collapse killed the project. London North Western couldn't maintain the new units because Viva Rail had a contract with them, and London North Western then, obviously, Viva Rail doesn't exist anymore, so they couldn't maintain the units, and they own the trains as well, Viva Rail, so the trains were withdrawn from the Marston Vale line, and it was like a year with rail replacement buses until they finally brought in Class 150s to replace the 230s. So the trains that replaced the Class 150s were themselves replaced by Class 150s, and now Class 150s run on the Marston Vale line. Over in Transport for Wales land though, and they said, look, it would be incredibly embarrassing if we don't even bring these units into service. So we're going to purchase the trains outright, and we're also going to undertake all the maintenance in-house by ourselves, whilst also taking on some Viva Rail employees. The rest of Viva Rail stock and staff were actually brought on by Great Western Railway, who said that they were going to look into and investigate into turning the Class 230 into a pure battery mode. Viva Rail was sort of working on it, and Great Western Railway said we'll take on that project and see if we can make a purely battery operated train to operate potentially one day on the Greenford branch in London or on some other branch lines as well. But we're going to invest money into this project, we're going to invest in the staff, and it sort of had a happy ending in the end for Viva Rail. Yes, they went bankrupt into administration, that's sad, but in the end it's nice to see that everything was sort of reused quite well. Back to Transport for Wales though, and the units actually had begun testing a few years prior. 2020 they made their debut on the Cotswold line, and they made it to Wales in July of 2020, but with COVID and the collapse of Viva Rail, training of drivers and staff was just incredibly slow. It took them ages to be able to train the drivers on the trains, and matters were made worse by the fact that TfW said that the trains weren't that reliable, and there were some questions raised about how reliable the trains were, but obviously we wouldn't know until they entered service. But that moment finally came on the 3rd of April 2023. The Class 230s entered service just the 4 years late, and the units had a perfect start into service. You know how I was just saying people didn't really know how reliable the units were? Yes, well, one unit broke down several times during the first day of operations and ended up terminating the final service short at Shotton Station, just the 59 minutes late. And that first day has sort of been how the 230s have gone on into service. To say it's been good would be a huge overstatement. But for that, we're going to go to another station because I'm bored of this random car park outside Bidston Station. So instead, let's hop on a train or a rail replacement bus, whichever one comes first, to a station down the line. I don't actually know which one I'm going to go to, and then we can talk more about the operations of the Class 230s since they've entered service with Transport for Wales, and why they might just be Britain's most unreliable trains. See you in a sec. Welcome to Heswell Station, which really, there's not much here. So I've about 15 minutes here, 12 minutes here to the train back towards Bidston, which is a 2:30, which I'm going to get to Upton. But yeah, it's very sunny. We're getting to that time of day and that time of year where the sun is just so low. But yeah, we've got 13 minutes into our train, so let's have a little chat about the 230s and their operations with Transport for Wales and the issues which they have encountered. So yeah, let's have a little look at the Class 230s. Since they entered service with Transport for Wales, I left you at Bidston talking about the Transport for Wales Class 230s entering into service on the 3rd of April 2023. And since entering service, well, throughout 2023, the units continued to have just terrible reliability, with most of the time Class 150s or 197s stepping in. I vividly remember one time coming on this line, hoping to get on a 230, and all the trains were Class 150s. I mean, talk about a downgrade. Now, literally within the first few days, they were taken out of service for 4 days because of technical issues, returning on the 12th day that they entered service, 12 days since they entered service, if that makes sense. They had like 8 days of running fine, then 4 days of not running, and then returned on the 12th day. With all the services being replaced by rail replacement buses, which was just terrible because the line had had rail replacement buses for like half a year prior to this because of other issues and the delays to the Class 230. So really the passengers on this line have really had a really bad last 3-4 years since COVID because of the delays and unreliability of these trains. Transport for Wales did blame the timetable, which had some merit to the blaming because the previous timetable was an hourly service with 2 trains running the service, and it had just a 2-minute turnaround at each terminus point. So 2-minute turnaround at Wrexham and a 2-minute turnaround at Bidston, which really didn't leave much time for making up any time if they were delayed for any reason, which really hindered reliability. Yeah, the timetable was just bad. It didn't work in the favour of the 230s. It didn't give them any time to make up time if they were delayed for any reason. So they did have some reason to blame the timetable, but Transport for Wales had to fix things. They couldn't allow the service to just be terrible and constantly be a rail replacement bus. So in June 2023, they had a 5-step improvement plan brought into action, which including things such as a dedicated route officer, which would help work out issues on the line, whilst also looking at improving how the units were maintained. Driver familiarity was improved to spot issues before they actually led to the cancellation of a service, whilst Transport for Wales would also invest in their Birkenhead depot, which was owned by Stadler, but they would invest in helping to improve the reliability of their trains. They hired some former Viva Rail contractors, fitters to help maintain the Class 230s as well. And they did also commit to a 2 train per hour service sometime in the future, but they couldn't state when this was because the trains were so unreliable at the time. This 5-step plan didn't work immediately. The next few months were continued cancellations and poor reliability and substitutions for Class 150s, with North Wales MS and Mark Isherwood actually speaking in the Welsh Senedd about the service. Now, it was revealed in July of 2023 that the issues with the Class 230s actually stemmed back from the pollen filters inside the trains. They were blocked up with pollen, and that caused the engines to overheat and caused the engines to shut down, and the trains had to be brought out of service. Now, at the time, Transport for Wales were trying to fix things by only having 1 Class 230 out each day, and that was swapped halfway through the day, and they could clean the filter to stop it from building up too much. But this didn't really work and wasn't, you couldn't keep on doing that for 30 years or however long the Class 230s will stay in traffic for. It was clearly a part-time solution. And they did say that they would fix it for spring and summer, which it seems like they have, but we'll get into that in a sec. But failures towards the end of 2023, not caused by the pollen filters, led to only about 2 or 3 of the units being available each day. But yeah, basically, the reliability was bad and there wasn't any real excuse for it. It was just the train was not reliable. Converting, like in the Class 769 video, converting a train which was something else to become diesel operation doesn't always work and is quite difficult to do. However, things started to slowly get better. By the autumn of 2023, they were able to get 2 Class 230s out each day, which was better than what was before. And there would be 2 of these which worked alongside Class 197s. And December 2023 was a big boost. The reliability was just good enough now that they could roll out a slightly improved service of an every 45-minute service, so 1.5 trains an hour. And this also had the boost of having much longer turnaround times. There's now like an 11-minute or 10-minute turnaround time at Wrexham Central and around a 7 or 8-minute turnaround time at Bidston. So that was hugely important and good for the Class 230s, of course. Although they couldn't run a 2 trains per hour service just yet due to infrastructure issues, which we'll get into in a minute. But the December 2023 timetable, the improved service and the improved dwell times significantly helped reliability and passenger figures, which we'll get to. Next station of Upton. Hello, I'm on a box. I've put the camera on a box thing here at Upton Station, which I believe is, well, Jeff Marshall a few years ago made a video on this being the least used station in whatever county we're in. So it might not be the least used anymore, but in my eyes it is. Are we in the Wirral? Is the Wirral a county? I don't know. We're not here to talk about the Wirral and least used stations in the Wirral. We're here to talk about the Class 230s. And just went on one. First time I've been on one in a few weeks actually. I went on one a few weeks ago. I like them, they're cool trains. We'll talk a little bit more about the actual interior of the trains in a bit, but they are cool. They're very quirky. Haven't been anything like them in my life. I can't really describe what they're like, but they're cool. I'm going back on the same one in about 10 minutes time to some station down there, maybe Shotton, I'm not sure. But yeah, they're cool trains. Where were we up to? We were up to this December 2023 timetable, a raft of new changes and improvements. An improvement to the service frequency and to the dwell time significantly improved the service here on the Borderlands Line. Reliability by April 2024 had increased to 80% of services being on time or within 3 minutes, which was a huge rise from just the 50% of April in 2023. With 60,000 extra journeys being made in the first 6 months of the new timetable in December of 2023, with the new route officer for TfW, Jeremy Williams, stating that last year things simply weren't good enough, but that the December 2023 timetable has significantly improved the service on the Borderlands Line. And there have been, in 2025, some days where only Class 230s have ran, for like the first time ever. It does suggest that the 230s are more reliable and have been getting there slowly. But before we talk about the future of the Borderlands Line and the 230s, we'll have a little talk about what's been going on with Great Western Railway. I sort of mentioned that the 230-001 had been purchased by Great Western Railway for battery testing. That's exactly what they've done. They've put like battery pads in it, which you can see at West Ealing Station on the Greenford branch, and apparently it's been a real success. And recently in October 2025, the Class 230 set a record for 200 miles on battery charge, which is the record for any train in the world, I believe. So they set a new Guinness World Record for that, and it shows that the technology is there. Battery trains are coming, and Great Western Railway soon want to run the 230s on the Greenford branch. I believe they're trying to get exemptions for what is called the ACC NTSN. I'm just blatantly reading that on my phone. Basically, because of the door heights and the platform heights on the Greenford branch and other things with the trains, they're not fully accessible, and they're not fully up to the regulations, which is similar to the Class 230s here and to the Class 484s. They had to apply for these exemptions as well, and they were permitted. So hopefully the GWR 230s are also permitted to be exempt from these accessibility requirements, and we can see them in service at some point. And of course they are still fully accessible. You can put a ramp on them just fine. It's just that they don't meet the legal limits for like step height to the platform. I think the steps gap's quite big. I don't know. You can read it up. I think there's like a whole government document about the exemption and things. But yeah, looking in the present right now, things are definitely improving, but there definitely have been days where 230s still break down because of issues. One will still break down, like on any train, especially with a train which was built in 1980 as well. So they're doing quite well in that respect. You know, look at the Class 150s which operate with Transport for Wales still. They are quite unreliable now, it must be said. I've had quite a few times where Northern 150s cancelled on me because they're unreliable. So it's definitely improved. And whilst it's a shame that the 230s couldn't continue in service London North Western Railway, we should be seeing them with a new operator soon, Great Western Railway, and GWR also looking at potentially even putting the Class 230s in on the other branches, the other Thames branches in the future, if the Greenford branch trial is a success. Now though, I think I'm going to go to Shotton, where I'll end the video, but I'll talk about the future of the trains here on the Borderlands Line, potential 2 trains an hour frequency, and maybe even direct services to Liverpool. I'll see you there. Well, as you might be able to tell, this isn't Shotton, this is Neston, because the guard, by the way, all Transport for Wales guards are just amazing. Anyway, he came up to me and said, oh, by the way, there's another 230 running. So if you change at Neston, you can get on both of the ones that are running today, 230-008 and 230-006 are the 2 units which are running today. So changing here so that I can get the other 230 maybe down to Bidston, and then we'll finish back where we started. I mean, it's 3 o'clock, maybe I could go to Shotton on that train to Bidston and then back to Shotton. I don't know, we'll work it out. So yes, gonna take a 230-006 back from Neston to Upton. We're going back to Upton, people, and then I'll get that same 230 back to Shotton, where we will end the video. at Upton Station. Second time I've been here today, probably twice as many times as anybody ever needs to come to Upton, but hey ho. I'm going to end the video at Shotton, but for now I will talk a little bit about the future of the 230s. So obviously for Great Western Railway we sort of just spoke about their battery operations. Hopefully soon we get to see them on the Greenford branch. I just realised I'm at like a major angle, but hopefully soon we get to see them on the Greenford branch. If so, I will be riding them. But here on the Borderlands Line, there is a hope to get 2 trains an hour onto the Borderlands Line one day, but it does require quite a bit of infrastructure work. At a place called Padeswood, there's a cement works and a lot of freight trains use it, and at the moment there's conflict with freight train paths and the paths of the, well, if there was 2 trains an hour, there would be conflicts between those freight paths, and there's not many signal blocks. If you know anything about signalling on the railways, there's different blocks, which is basically the distance between signals, and that's called a block. Only one train can be in that block, and there's only like 4 blocks on the whole of this line, or maybe even less than that. So they need to add more blocks, and that means you pay for more signalling and pay for signalling equipment, improvements and things. It's going to cost about £40 million to be able to improve the infrastructure to allow for 2 trains an hour to operate, because of the freight trains and the increase in passenger trains that 2 trains an hour would warrant. As well as Transport for Wales are investing into the Class 230s by trying to make them more reliable. Apparently 2 or 3 units have been invested currently in these major improvement works for reliability concerns. I'm not sure what units they are. I'm going to assume 230.06 and 230.08 are 2 of those units because they're out today, and they seem to be working quite well. Going into the future, 2 trains an hour, maybe, hopefully, one day. What's more, well, not important, but what's more, what the word that I'm looking for, ambitious, is services to go to Liverpool. There's always been a hope that one day services will go all the way to Liverpool. That would only be possible using Class 777s because they currently operate the line. Now their battery capacity is like just not enough to be able to run the whole distance of the line and back again. They would have to charge somewhere. So the thought is that if Class 777s ever operated, there would be a half-hourly service from Liverpool up towards Wrexham along the Bidston Borderlands Line. There would be some form of third rail infrastructure built somewhere along the line, probably towards Wrexham, to allow the trains to charge. There can be fast charging, where the trains can basically be charged like half full by like 10 minutes under this third rail application, but obviously new third rail construction is basically banned, so they would have to bypass that, which I think is probably possible. There was an article that I read that said that it probably would be possible if it was done in the right way, and if it was done in a way that means the third rail could be turned off when the train isn't over it, because obviously that reduces the risk of anybody getting injured. So maybe one day we might just see Class 777s take over the operations of this line. Now Merseyrail do have an option to order more Class 777s. I think it's like 25 more Class 777s. I assume they would have to order them relatively soon though. I can't see that happening at the moment. And they would obviously have to order the ones which are bi-mode as well. And while the technology isn't just there, I don't think, for the charging of the 777s. But who knows, maybe someday in the future we get bi-mode trains running all the way into Liverpool. It would be great. I mean, to be fair, the connection isn't even bad at Bidston, but having a direct service is just always easier and reduces, it would improve reliability on this line as well. So that's sort of it for the Class 230s. Their future is a bit shrouded in mystery. We don't really know what's happening at the moment. We don't really know what the plan is. 2 trains an hour, one day. It is worth noting that those improvements to the signalling work have been confirmed by Network Rail, but they won't be completed until 2026 or 2027 at the earliest, and then it's down to Transport for Wales to actually bring in the improved timetable. So we just have to wait and see what happens. The sun is setting here in whatever county I'm in, wherever I am, the Wirral. The sun is setting. It's quite a pretty sunset tonight though, I must say. Why is it getting dark at 3:30 though? Who invented the clocks going back, or whatever they went? Forward, back, back. They went back. The Class 230s, I said I would go into what they're actually like. They're really cool. They retain some of this like longitudinal seating that would have been on the tube. Every seat has a power outlet. The longitudinal seating has a USB, and then the more traditional forward bay seats or whatever they are, airline and table seats, have power sockets and USB ports as well. It's a good offering. They have proper big disabled toilets. There's a lot of doors. They open extremely slowly. It's quite embarrassingly slowly. You're sort of waiting there for like 25 seconds. Like, come on. You sort of want to push it with your hand, which probably would damage the doors. Although I have seen quite a lot of staff members do that. Like the guard that I was on that train just got bored. He's like, I'm just going to push it open. So maybe you can do it. I wouldn't recommend though. But yeah, the seats are comfy, especially for like, I think it's end to end, like an hour. But yeah, I like the 230s. They are nice. There's something about them which is just cool. I don't think I've ever been on a train like it. And the 769s I mentioned in my 769 video, they are just cool trains, but they are still just very much like a normal train. The 230s sort of feel not like a train. They clearly are, but they feel something very different. There's something about the noise just sounds nothing like any other train that I know, and my face is very orange now. And like, they are very rickety. It's almost like being back on a pacer. It's quite nice, really. They are a massive upgrade to the 150s though. Well, anything is really, not a pacer though. Anything bar pacer is an upgrade to the 150s. But yeah, I quite like them. I'll get into my thoughts about the 230s reliability versus the 769s at Shotton, where we'll wrap up this video. But for now, let's take 230 006 to Shotton. Welcome to Shotton. It's getting quite dark now. I'm on the low level platforms, which is the North Wales coastline. We're about maybe 15-20 minutes from Chester. Behind me and then straight in front of me is towards Llandudno and onwards towards Holyhead. I'm just going to put my camera down on this bin. But yes, apart from the earlier incident with that broken down freight train, today's been a good day on the Borderlands Line. As I was saying just before I got interrupted at Upton by that 2:30 arrival, are these trains worse than the 769s? In my opinion, no. I think they were scuppered by COVID and the administration of VivaRail more so than the trains actually being bad. I mean, they do work. Yes, they were pretty poor reliability wise in their first few years of operations with Transport for Wales, but they seem to have turned a page and are now pretty decently reliable. So in my opinion, although these were probably once some of Britain's most unreliable trains, they probably are still pretty unreliable compared to the average train. I don't think these are terrible trains by any stretch of the imagination. If the 230s didn't exist, 197s would have to cover for them, and that would mean less Class 197s for other services, for example the Llandudno to Manchester Airport services. But they're still not perfect, although a train is never perfect. And I do think overall they offer a much better product than the Class 769s do, just much better overall. And they just feel like new trains. The 769s definitely feel like old trains which have been handed over to the north, which seems to be quite a common occurrence. Whilst the 230s feel like new trains, I reckon if you put them side by side, interior wise and things, people would definitely say the 230s feel much more new, and they do, it must be said. Obviously the 230s with London North Western Railway didn't exactly go to plan, but then again it wasn't their fault. VivaRail's collapse and run into administration really didn't help the trains and the operations with London North Western Railways, so you can sort of let them off in that instance. So there we have it. It's been a bit of a bonkers video. Obviously it hasn't gone exactly to plan, but I hope you've enjoyed nonetheless. If so, do like, subscribe, check out my other videos. I do videos similar to this. I will be planning on doing more videos like this in the future, so smash like, smash subscribe. If you want to follow me on Twitter or Blue Sky, links in the description below. If you want to chat to me on my Discord server, it's free, link in the description below. And if you want to support me even further, you can be even more generous and join my YouTube channel membership or Patreon membership. You'll be getting your shout outs in a second, members, but you get access to exclusive members only videos, all videos early, etc, etc. It also helps me do things like this. I wouldn't be able to do this today if it wasn't for you guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
And of course, a huge thank you to all my YouTube and Patreon members, including First Class members Aaron Barry, Crispin McKee and JBNEL, Business Zone members Andrew Bowen, Anthony James Moore, ARK, Connor Gregg, Clive's Travelling Trains, Kimberly Carriages, Daniel Burford, Dave CDF, J Teco, Lewis C21, NJTE, Ollie G, Real, That Transport Girl, Train Life GB, Will Ho and Zach Renfrey, as well as all my standard premium and standard class members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. You can join them on this list from as little as £2.99 a month, or become a member from as little as 99p a month. Including your membership includes access to all my videos early, as well as access to exclusive members only videos. Thank you so much, your support means the world to me, so thank you. Once again, thanks for watching this video. Do check out my Twitter, Blue Sky and Discord server in the links in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.